Oh shit, hey there muchachas. I said hey. Hi. I said hey. I said hello. Definitely said hi. All right. Well, okay. Today I had something that I wanted to talk about something that has been on my mind for since I was a little kid, since I was introduced to the topic, and I'm not going to beat around the bush, people. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to do anything of that nature. I think that furries are really neat. I am now a social pariah. I think the craftsmanship and artistry that goes into a lot of these fursuits that I see is unmatched. I mean, you have to wear it all day. It's hot, it's stinky. You literally have to commit to it. And not only do people do that, but they make it look kind of cool as well. I like these a lot. I think these are kind of like my favorite designs with like the little pastels, and it's very like light and airy and wispy. It also just reminds me very much of like Y2K, Fruitero, whatever the hell shit that is fucking called. And I guess I want to say that I don't really have a structure to this, so I'm just gonna kind of go in. We're gonna talk about some facts, some history, just kind of things that I was curious about. I'm gonna tell you about now. I'm not a furry. I've never been to a furry convention. I don't even think I've ever actually like seen a furry in person. I've seen parts of a fursuit at a thrift store, and that was crazy because I was like, why is it here? What happened? Like, did a furry get evicted? Let's get into it. General overview, I guess. So the thing with furries is that they don't have a particular fandom per se, like a brony or a Hoovian, a Trekkie, what have you. They kind of came from this underground comics movement in the 70s. Many things in this movement were very vulgar and very lively, animated, I would say. That being said, many of these were comics, which featured animals as main characters. They were sexy, or at least presented to appear sexy. Fritz the Cat is kind of considered the first ever modern furry movie. Take that lightly. It's vulgar. There's a shit ton of sexual imagery. I mean, like, they literally have an orgy in the movie in a bathtub. And it somewhat added legitimacy to the emerging furry and animation community because it was like the first ever rated X animated movie, and people were like, oh, I guess cartoons aren't so PG now. They do sex and drugs. Oh, and violence. Remember violence from, the rating system? In any subculture, you need gratuitous violence to make it legitimate. That, right? Like, that's how it works, right? Totally, totally mean that, by the way. I also had questions like, conventions and meetups and how that worked, and this is what I figured out. In 1989, Conference Zero is considered to be the first ever exclusively furry convention. It took place in, where do you think it took place? I think it took place in somewhere like Kansas or Florida. Like, where do you think the most normal place to have the first ever? It's California. It's Southern California. It was held at the Holiday Bristol Inn in Costa Mesa, California. This began due to the huge furry presence at the Baycon science fiction conventions. Mark Merlino and Rod O'Reilly would throw furry parties, which got so popular that they made a furry exclusive convention conference. What a name, by the way. Don't make them like that no more. These conventions were typically more adult-oriented than, the latter kind of convention. Mostly, I feel like back then, like, conventions were a meetup space for, you know how nowadays, like, it's more mainstream to, it's kind of cool to go to a convention and to see, like, a sexy anime lady. But back then, this was fringe, I would think. I don't think you'd be very proud to go to one of these. Maybe you are. Maybe you were. Were you? Were you there? I saw you. Other than these conventions, there was also, a heavy, heavy online presence due to the epic 90s. And, also just due to the ever cool, ever online, totally tubular web surfing 90s. Uh, Furries began to meet up on things called mucks. I did not know what a muck was. Tiny Muck is a user extendable online text based role playing game designed for Role-playing. Crazy. There's like a subsection of mucks called furry mucks, and they're what I was able to figure out, I think they're like DOS games. And I don't have a lot of know-how in that section. So looking at this kind of freaks me out. I feel like if I was using the computer back then, I would feel like I was doing illegal things. It looks and feels illegal, probably because like people still use them nowadays, but probably for like nefarious purposes. And there actually is a rather large sociological draw to furries. There is the International Anthropomorphic Research Project, the IARP, if you will. It is a team of social scientists from various disciplines. They have been collecting data on furries using numerous methodologies. They've been doing this for years now. That's crazy. Some of their findings include the average furry is between 23 and 27 years of age. More than 75% of furries report being 25 years old or younger, and 88% of adult furries are under the age of 30. I did not interview furries that were underage due to ethical reasons, but you've been online, you have eyes, you've probably seen a couple furry profile pictures and seen like MD and I in their contact little bar thing. So they're there. They're definitely there. I feel like if they were included, they would make up an even larger part of the whole furry sphere. But is it something you grow out of? I think for a lot of people they do. What does the furry lifestyle entail? Oh my gosh, that's funny. 67.1% of furries identified themselves as male on the surveys, while 23.3% identified as female. 2% of furries identified themselves as transgender, 10% identified themselves as genderqueer or non-binary. Here's some other demographics. 83 to 90% of furries self-identify as white, with a small percentage of Asian, 2 to 4%, Black, 2 to 3%, and Hispanic being around 3%. But this is also very interesting. 21% of furries consider themselves to be bronies, 44% consider themselves to be anime fans, and 11% consider themselves to be sport fans. I do wonder if sport fan is esports. I feel like it would be esports, but also I do think about, your high school mascot and if that like awakened anything in anyone. Well, can you imagine like a bunch of like middle-aged dads like watching football for the thrill of seeing their favorite anthropomorphic mascot and just kind of shifting in their seat slightly uncomfortably? That's really gross, but funny. That's a funny thought. I hate it. 21% being bronies. That's crazy because like I said, there's not one specific overculture in the furry sphere, but 21% being bronies, that is one, IP to adhere to. Huh. Well, cuz like also think about it. I don't really even think you see a lot of like fursuits of established My Little Pony characters. It's more so like whenever I see like cosplays, it's like just kind of people dressing up in inspired, like maybe Decoden esque wear, especially for like Pinkie Pie. People love dressing up as Pinkie Pie because I feel like they can really like go all out as a Pinkie Pie girl or boy or neither. I'm sorry. Also, kind of weirdly though, when I was looking into like the religions of furries, I don't know why. I just assumed that the majority would be not Christian. I thought that they would be atheists. Not that like believing in God and also being a furry is just such a funny thought. As I think about like going to heaven and God finally talking to you and patting you on the back and being like, if you want to assume your furry form for the rest of your afterlife, I can do that for you. Who would say yes in Christian heaven? Anyway, 23.5% of furries self-identified as Christian, 16.8% as atheist, and 11% pagan or Wiccan, 2.4% as Buddhist, and 1.2% as Jewish. There's also a bunch of other religions, but the term furry can be dated to at least as early as 1983. This term became the most accepted wording to describe those who attended the conventions by the mid-1990s. There was like kind of a point of contention between the word furry and furries, but I think that we don't really have that distinction anymore. And the style itself, when you look at a furry, you probably have a very, preconceived image of what it's going to look like. probably like some dude in a fursuit, maybe like a fox or a wolf, which are the two most popular suit choices. Big eyes, very animated, maybe probably a smile, big toothy smile, big ears, floppy, kind of plushy body. Cool. Yeah, the style is very itself. The most credited works that attribute to this category, or at least like to the very toon style, are gonna be like Watership Down, the Disney Robin Hood, and like Akira the Lion. Just say Kimba the White Lion. I do not know why I said Akira. I guess I was thinking about the Akira. I don't know why. Sorry about that. And more toonish things, like very wacky. Also, I feel like Animaniacs, I've seen so many posts about being in the 90s and people like making nasty art of the Animaniacs creatures, specifically Minerva Mink. I think she was one of the first like sexy animals for a furry. Okay. On the more historical side, sexual anthropomorphic imagery has been around way longer than you would think, kind of like since the beginning of time. Some of the very first sex toys actually come from animal-inspired rituals. And we still kind of have that animalistic quality. Bad Dragon actually encapsulates a lot of the qualities that we see here. Many a phallic toy in the shape of a or form of an animal in some way. Relating to furries, these toys have actually been kind of claimed by the queer community. And the furry fandom also kind of exists in itself as an online queer sex space. And then we also kind of have, well, I don't even think I have to explain at this point because there's a million videos on it, but like something like the Omegaverse kind of also has its fingers wiggled into furry history. Also, cool furry fact, only 30% of furries actually suit. Which I don't think is that odd because the cost of being a furry is exorbitant. You always hear that like people who suit are like, programmers, fucking data analysts, like pilots, things like that. That's true. It's a very expensive and time consuming that not a lot of people really can do properly, even if they want to. I mean, making a suit, thousands of dollars, hours and hours upon time, and it depends on like the quality that you want. Also, I've seen some crazy just sewing techniques in like suit making. I really do think something that interests me about furries is that it really is just the lack of fandom dominance. When you think furry, you don't automatically go to an image of like Scooby-Doo or something like that. You probably think of some generic OC, like literally some random wolf or fox. Or Sonic. Okay, and I got confirmation. Sonic characters are not furries. Something in my heart tells me that is wrong because when I look at Tails, that is a furry. That is a fox. That is an anthropomorphic fox. I could see that being translated very easily to a fursuit. But I guess I'm wrong. All right. Another fun fact, the god of manga, Osamu Tezuka, made lots of furry transformation art, and they didn't really know until after he died and his daughter was going through all of his, scripts and stuff and found it. Uh, I'll put some of it on here because it's actually kind of cool looking. Well, as for like my personal thoughts about furries, the only thing I really like want to end this with is just saying something like a little controversial. Hope you guys are ready for this. A furry themed Met Gala? Met Gala? Think about it. Think about it. Like, cause who, okay, like, who would Lady Gaga, like, think about it. Like, who would Lady Gaga be? What about the Jenners? I don't know, Kim K? I feel like Kim K would want to be like a dachshund or something like that. A wiener dog? She wouldn't want to be a fucking wiener dog. Look at me talking out of my ass. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe also like maybe like Melanie Martinez is kind of like ahead of the game because while her new whole thing isn't technically a furry, it feels also furry adjacent. Like that is a step away. Something's not adding up. I think there should be more bug furries. I want to see a spider. Also apparently furries and scalies, not well, I know that they're not the same thing, but like if I had to pick an animal to be to ascribe myself to. I feel I would have like an animalistic swagger, but also kind of like a stinky look about me. I do think skunk. I think skunk would be very topical. I could also see bat because I am chronically like weak, love fruit. Nighttime is very cool. And I just generally like feel leathery and like nasty and gross. I like how I feel like a bat would. But also stinky. So this is a very tough question for me. Um, Hopefully we figure out one day, like, because we need to know. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to me ramble. Thank you guys for just like, I don't know, thank you guys for just being here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna leave before I really disgust myself. Bye.